My name is Max Czapowski, and this is Making an Indie Short. Let's go.
Bring some weed, I got a story to tell.
So as some of you know, I just finished a production on my very first short film, an independent short, otherwise known as an indie short. I had never made a short film of any kind before, and certainly not one on this scale. So it was a hell of a learning experience, and this video series is intended to be a deep dive into that experience, partially so I could remember the experience and partially for others who maybe are embarking on their own journey of this kind. It's honestly a miracle that movies even get made. From writing the script to making sure that it's a good script, and then to financing the film, and even after the film is financed, getting the right people attached to the film, from all the above the line people like the director, the producers, the talent, to every other member of the crew, down to the PAs and Crafty and everyone else that just makes it happen. It is honestly a miracle that movies get made. Good movies being made is even more of a miracle that is so highly improbable that I honestly have a new level of respect for the art. To understand the backstory of the film, you should understand my backstory. So I come from an immigrant family. I was born and raised in Kiev, Ukraine, and we moved to the US in 1992. We settled in Louisville, Kentucky. So English is my second language. I started learning it when I was 10, and the Ukrainian/Russian speaking culture permeated and still permeates everything in my family. Everybody in my family is very creative. So my grandfather was an accomplished poet and journalist in Kiev. My mom taught voice and piano at University of Kiev. My grandmother was an educator, and my dad was the very left brain heavy part of the family. He was a theoretical physicist, but he also was creative in that he played the guitar when he was in a band when he was younger. And so we had this really interesting dynamic where we had lots of creativity in our family, but also people were very, very analytical, especially my dad. And so when we moved to America, the reason we moved was in pursuit of the American dream. And my parents moved for a chance at a better life, especially for me. This was before my brother was born. And so when I went to college, I studied management information systems and finance, and got my dad's dream job at GE in their management leadership program. They were happy. I was not happy. And I really wanted to pursue more creative endeavors, but my parents obviously sacrificed a lot to come to the US, and they wanted me to make something of myself, and that inevitably meant doing something that was a little bit less creative and more of a standard sort of 9-to-5 job, right? Because their thought process was probably, if I wanted to be a starving artist, which in their minds I would be if I took a creative route, then they didn't have to move to the US for that. So I had always loved to write, but I never really had a reason to write anything. I wasn't writing a book. I wasn't writing newspaper articles or anything like that. And so I hated the act of sitting down to write. But once I was in the groove, I did enjoy writing. And I still do. When the pandemic hit in May of 2020, it was a couple of months into the pandemic, my wife and I decided, hey, let's take the kids down to Florida and just enjoy life down there, considering we have no idea what's happening in the world. And as we were driving down to Florida, I started to think about some of these crazy conversations I've had with my parents, that literally things you can't make up, about how it should take me less time to get down to Louisville, or how they follow their GPS to get lost all the time, just, ridiculous things. And then it got me thinking about sort of the family dynamic when, parents want their kids to be successful, but sometimes they push so hard as to alienate their children. And when you add immigration, when you layer immigration on top of that, it creates even more pressure on the parents and therefore on the kids. And so I started writing this story. And at first it was more of a sort of cathartic story that was gonna help me get all these things out, and it was kind of like therapy. And as the story took shape, I thought, maybe there's something to this. And I started building out a 3-act structure, and I put together a theme for the story, and I started writing character descriptions. And, it just made it so interesting to me that all the characters are complex. There's not an obvious good guy and bad guy, and you could probably see everyone's perspectives depending on who you are as an audience member. And so I literally started a Google Doc and I started writing. As the summer of 2020 was in full swing, I sent the script to Alex Kruglov, my second cousin who lives in LA and has been in the entertainment and tech industry there for a long time. And his initial thought was one of validation. And honestly, that early in the process, I could have definitely, used that validation. And one of the first things, he actually gave me 2 pieces of feedback. One of them was, you have to write the Russian dialogue in Russian because it's not realistic for parents to speak to each other in English, mostly. And you have to add some humor because otherwise it would be, as he called it, a lifetime special. So I embarked on the process of rewriting that script for the first of many, many revisions. And I had to start thinking about word choices and how I was going to, what sort of expressions come naturally to me in English, but not naturally at all in Russian. And so I had to learn how to, type in Russian on an English keyboard, and it was definitely a very steep learning curve. And at this point, I had no idea what I wanted to do with this. I just thought that it would be interesting to write this thing, whether it was just going to end up as a story, or maybe if it could turn into a short film. But because I knew nothing about this and I had no idea where to even begin, I just thought, let's just keep this thing going and see what happens. So in the summer of 2020, I started to think about, well, if I were to cast this, if I were to do something like this, the first place I would need to start with is talent. And so I started thinking about how can I even find a casting agent that would take something like this on. I'm going to get a lot more into people in chapter 2, so casting agents, cast, crew, things like that. But back to the script, I basically ended up putting it down. Life got in the way in the fall of 2020, and I really had no time to work on the script. And frankly, I figured, hey, with the pandemic in full swing, most productions are shut down. And the last thing people are thinking about is working on an indie short, which is where they would have to make massive sacrifices in terms of their day rate. Actors and, sort of most people in the entertainment industry were out of work because of the pandemic. And I decided to put it down and focus on other things. My parents did not know about this project at all. And frankly, I didn't know where it was going to go, so I had no reason to tell them. And in the summer of 2023, I decided to pick this back up. The writers and actors strike was actually in full swing at that point. I do remember that. And one of the first things I had to do was a complete rewrite of the script, because at this point I thought, you know what? I have to make this film, right? I can't not do it. This is a compelling story. I had sent it to a few more people and they gave me some initial feedback on it. And the overarching sort of theme was, there's something here and you should definitely build it out. You should definitely keep going. So I was in the process of this rewrite, but the main thing that I really needed was a win, right? Something that was gonna give me validation and energy and fuel to keep moving forward. And because I wasn't hearing back from casting agents, I thought, you know what? I just got to start reaching out to people on Instagram and DMing them, which I had literally never had any success with, but I thought, hey, what the hell? So my first win came on July 18th, 2023, as I was waiting for my delayed flight to New York. And that is where we are going to pick it up for Chapter 2. Thank you for watching Making an Indie Short. I'm Max Stropowski. Talk to you soon.